Pay very close attention, because what you are about to hear was never meant for the majority. It was never packaged into a classroom lesson, never printed on a motivational poster, and never whispered by anyone who wanted you to stay comfortable. This is the knowledge that empires were built on, and it starts with a single, terrifying realization. The most powerful person in any room is not the one who speaks the loudest. It is the one who speaks the least. Let that sink in for a moment. You have spent years, maybe your entire life, believing that influence comes from being heard. That if you just say the right thing, at the right time, with enough confidence and enough volume, the world will finally respect you. You were taught to speak up, to make your voice count, to put yourself out there. And so you did. You shared your opinions freely. You filled every silence with nervous words. You explained yourself when no explanation was needed. You argued your point when walking away would have been the deadliest weapon you could wield. And where did it get you? Be honest. Not with me. With yourself. Where did all that talking actually get you? Did it earn you the deep, bone-level respect you were seeking? Did it make people fear losing you? Did it create that gravitational pull, that magnetic weight, that unshakable presence you see in the men and women who seem to control a room without lifting a finger? No, it did not, and here is why. Every word you speak is a piece of yourself you hand to someone else. Every opinion you volunteer is a map of your interior, your fears, your desires, your insecurities, your pressure points. You think you are connecting. You think you are being authentic. But what you are really doing is disarming yourself in front of people who may not have your best interests at heart. You are handing them the exact blueprint they need to manipulate you, undermine you, or simply dismiss you. Machiavelli understood this with surgical precision. In The Prince, he wrote that a prudent man should always follow the paths beaten by great men and imitate those who have been supreme. But what did the supreme men do? They watched. They waited. They calculated. And above all, they were silent when others expected noise. This is not about being shy. This is not about social anxiety dressed in a philosophical costume. This is about understanding a truth so fundamental, so ancient, and so deliberately hidden that most people will live and die without grasping it. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is power in its purest, most concentrated form. Think of it like this. Sound disperses. It travels outward, loses energy, fades. But silence compresses. It draws inward. It creates a vacuum. And nature, as you know, abhors a vacuum. When you are silent, the world leans in. People fill that space with their own projections, their own fears, their own assumptions about what you might be thinking. And in that space, in that void you have deliberately created, you become larger than any words could ever make you. This is the principle that separates the dominant from the dominated, the sovereign from the servant, the man who walks into a room and shifts its gravity from the man who walks in and is swallowed by it. And the tragedy is this: you were never taught it. You were taught the opposite. You were raised in a culture that rewards noise, celebrates the loudest voice, promotes the most visible performer. Social media turned every human being into a broadcaster, a content machine, a desperate signal in an ocean of static. And in that chaos, the silent man became invisible. Or so everyone assumed. But the silent man was never invisible. He was watching. He was learning. He was mapping the weaknesses of every loud fool in the room. And when the moment came, when precision mattered more than volume, he struck with a force that no amount of chatter could ever match. You are here because something in you already knows this. Something in you has always suspected that the game is not played the way you were told. You have felt it. That quiet pull toward restraint, that instinct to hold back when everyone else is rushing forward. That is not weakness. That is your oldest, deepest intelligence trying to wake you up. So wake up, right now. Because in the next hour, you are going to learn 7 laws, not suggestions, not tips, not gentle pieces of advice. 7 laws that will fundamentally alter the way you exist in every room you enter. These are not laws I invented. These are laws that Machiavelli observed in the courts of Renaissance Italy. Laws that generals, kings, and the most feared strategists in history understood as the bedrock of human dominance. And every single one of them begins with the same foundation: the mastery of silence. Let me be clear about something before we go further. This is not a video for everyone. If you are looking for warm affirmations and comfortable truths, leave now. This is for the man or woman who is tired of being underestimated, tired of being talked over, tired of giving their energy to people and situations that return nothing. This is for the person who is ready to stop performing and start commanding. Because there is a difference, and it is everything. The performer seeks attention. The commander attracts it. The performer adjusts to the room. The commander forces the room to adjust to him. The performer speaks to fill the void inside himself. The commander lets the void grow and watches as others drown in it. Machiavelli saw this distinction everywhere. He saw it in Cesare Borgia, who could sit at a banquet surrounded by enemies and say nothing for an entire evening. And by the time he left, every man at that table was terrified. Not because Borgia had threatened them, not because he had raised his voice or brandished a weapon, but because his silence said something that words never could. I do not need to prove anything to you. I already know the outcome. That is the energy you are going to learn to cultivate. Not arrogance, not coldness for the sake of coldness, but a deep, earned, unshakable sovereignty over your own presence. The kind of presence that makes people rethink their words before they speak to you. The kind that makes a room recalibrate the moment you enter it. Now let me show you how it works. And more importantly, why it works. There is a concept in psychology called the ambiguity effect. When humans encounter something they cannot immediately read or categorize, their brains go into overdrive. They become hyper-attentive. They start projecting meaning, filling in gaps, constructing narratives. This is why the silent person in a group is almost always perceived as more intelligent, more confident, and more dangerous than the person who will not stop talking. When you speak freely, you become a known quantity, and known quantities are easy to manage. People know your triggers. They know your emotional patterns. They know exactly how to push you off balance. But when you withhold, when you offer less than expected, you become a mystery, and a mystery cannot be controlled. This is not manipulation. This is architecture. You are building a structure of perception around yourself, brick by deliberate brick. And every word you choose not to say is a brick that makes that structure taller, thicker, more impenetrable. Think about the last meeting you attended, at work, in a social group, anywhere. Who talked the most? Probably the person most desperate for validation. And who talked the least? Probably the person everyone kept glancing at, wondering what they were thinking. That quiet person held more influence in that room than every loud voice combined. Not because they had more knowledge or better ideas, but because they understood, consciously or instinctively, that scarcity creates value. Your words are currency, and like any currency, the more you print, the less each unit is worth. Inflation destroys economies, and verbal inflation destroys respect. Every unnecessary word you speak devalues the next one. But when you speak rarely, when your words are events rather than background noise, each sentence lands like a verdict. Machiavelli called this economy of action, and he applied it not just to words but to everything. Gestures, decisions, emotional displays. The prince who reacted to every provocation was seen as weak. The prince who absorbed provocations in silence and responded only when the timing was lethal, that was the prince who kept his throne. You are going to learn to be that prince, not in some abstract philosophical way, in your daily life, in your office, in your relationships, in every conversation you have from this moment forward. Here is the first shift you need to make, and it starts right now. Stop equating silence with absence. In your mind, silence has been coded as something passive, as the thing that happens when you have nothing to say. But from this moment on, silence is an action. It is a choice. It is the most deliberate, most powerful move you can make in any interaction. When someone insults you and you say nothing, that is not weakness. That is the sound of a blade being sharpened. When someone tries to provoke you and you simply hold their gaze without flinching, that is not passivity. That is dominance in its purest form. When you walk into a room and choose observation over performance, that is not shyness. That is the strategy of a predator, and people feel it. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel the difference in their bones. There is a reason why the silent person makes others uncomfortable. It is not because silence is awkward. It is because silence strips away the social masks. It creates a space where truth has room to breathe, and most people are terrified of truth. You are not going to be most people, not anymore. Let us go deeper, because understanding that silence is powerful is only the beginning. The real question, the question that separates the amateur from the master, is this: how do you wield silence strategically? How do you use it not as a blunt instrument, but as a precision tool, a scalpel that cuts exactly where it needs to? That is what the 7 laws are about. Each one is a specific, actionable principle drawn from Machiavellian strategy, refined through centuries of observation and applicable to the world you live in right now. Not the world of Renaissance courts and political intrigue, although those lessons translate perfectly, but the world of boardrooms, relationships, social hierarchies, and digital noise. The first law will challenge everything you think you know about communication. The second will change how you enter every room. The third will give you a weapon so subtle that no one will see it coming. And by the 7th, you will understand why the silent man does not just survive in a world of noise. He rules it. But I need you to do something first. I need you to commit. Not to me, to yourself. Commit to staying until the end. Not because I am asking, but because the version of you that exists after absorbing these laws is someone you have never met. And that version is waiting, patiently, silently, just like the force you are about to unleash. So settle in. Turn off the distractions. Close the other tabs. Because the noise ends here, and your real education begins. The ancient Romans had a phrase, si ta quisis, philosophus mansisis. If you had kept silent, you would have remained a philosopher. The deepest wisdom they could imagine was not found in speech. It was found in the discipline to remain quiet when every instinct screamed to speak. And that discipline, that cold, deliberate, almost inhuman control, is what made the difference between the man who was remembered and the man who was forgotten. Machiavelli took this further. He observed that men who speak too freely are not just seen as foolish, they are seen as exploitable. Every word is a confession. Every unguarded sentence is an invitation for your enemies to map your weaknesses. The wise prince, he argued, reveals only what serves his purpose and buries everything else beneath a mask of calm composure. This is not deception. This is survival. This is the art of existing in a world where most people are unconsciously competing for status, for dominance, for control, and doing so with the clumsiest possible tools: loud opinions, emotional outbursts, desperate displays of competence. These are the tools of the conquered. You are going to learn the tools of the conqueror. And it all starts with a simple, brutal truth that you need to burn into your mind like a brand. The moment you feel the urge to speak, the moment you feel that compulsion rising in your chest, that is precisely the moment you need to stop. breathe, and say nothing. Because that urge, that is not wisdom trying to express itself. That is your ego, desperate and starving, begging to be fed. And every time you feed it, you lose a little more of the power that silence would have given you. The silent man is not silent because he has nothing to say. He is silent because he understands that what he does not say is infinitely more powerful than what he does. Let that truth settle into your bones. Let it become part of your operating system, because from this point forward, everything changes. Now, before the 7 laws unfold before you, understand this final piece. The world you have been navigating until now, the world of polite conversation, social niceties, and expected responses. That world operates on a set of rules designed to keep everyone equal, comfortable, predictable. And the moment you step outside those rules, the moment you choose silence over compliance, depth over surface, strategy over impulse, you become something the system was never designed to handle. You become ungovernable. And that, in the Machiavellian sense, is the beginning of true power. Not power over others, though that will come naturally, but power over yourself, power over your reactions, power over the narrative that others try to write about you. When you master silence, you master the story. And the man who controls the story controls everything. Machiavelli knew that fortune favors the bold, but he also knew something even more dangerous. Fortune fears the silent, because the bold man announces his intentions and gives the world time to prepare. But the silent man moves through the world like a shadow, and by the time anyone notices him, the game is already over. That shadow is what you are becoming, right now, in this very moment. The question is not whether you are ready. The question is whether you are willing. Willing to let go of the compulsion to be heard. Willing to embrace the discomfort of restraint. Willing to trade the cheap currency of constant expression for the gold standard of calculated silence. If you are willing, truly willing, then the 7 laws will find fertile ground in you. They will root themselves in your mind, reshape your instincts, and transform the way you move through every interaction for the rest of your life. And it begins now, with the first law, the law that Machiavelli himself considered the foundation of all strategic power, the law that has been used by kings, generals, spy masters, and the most formidable minds in human history to bend reality to their will. Stay with me. Because the silence you are about to master is not empty, it is loaded. Law 1. The law of the withheld word. Here is the first truth that will rewire your brain. The most powerful thing you can do in any conversation is not speak. It is pause. Not the kind of pause that happens because you are searching for words. Not the hesitation of uncertainty. A deliberate, surgical, almost predatory pause. The kind that tells everyone in the room that you are choosing your next words the way a sniper chooses a target. Machiavelli wrote that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. But there is a deeper layer to this observation. The truly intelligent ruler does not just surround himself with capable men. He lets those men speak first. He lets them reveal their positions, their biases, their blind spots. And only after the entire board has been exposed does he make his move. This is the law of the withheld word. You do not speak first. You do not speak most. You speak last. And you speak least. Because the person who speaks last has heard every argument, observed every reaction, and identified every weakness. The person who speaks last operates with information that the first speaker could never possess. Think about how this applies to your life right now. In a meeting, the person who jumps in first with their opinion is not the leader. They are the most anxious person in the room. They are trying to establish relevance before it can be questioned. but the person who listens, who absorbs, who lets the conversation unfold, and then delivers a single, precise observation. That person is perceived as the authority. Not because they said the most, because they said the right thing at the right time. This is a weapon most people never learn to use because it requires something they do not have: the ability to tolerate discomfort. Silence in a group setting feels like pressure. It feels like everyone is waiting for you to contribute, and the average person breaks under that pressure every single time. They blurt out something, anything, just to relieve the tension. But you are not going to be average. You are going to sit in that silence like a king sits on a throne, comfortable, unhurried, sovereign. And when you finally speak, the room will not just hear you. The room will obey you. Practice this. The next time you are in a conversation, any conversation, resist the urge to fill the silence. Let it breathe, let it grow, and watch what happens. Watch how people lean in. Watch how they start offering more information than they intended. Watch how your silence makes them uncomfortable, and how that discomfort shifts the power entirely in your direction. The withheld word is not about saying nothing forever. It is about understanding that the timing of your speech is more important than its content. A mediocre idea delivered at the perfect moment will always outperform a brilliant idea delivered too early. Timing is everything, and timing requires patience, and patience requires silence. Master this law, and you have already separated yourself from 90% of the population. Law 2. The law of the unreadable face. Your face is a billboard. Right now, without any training, your face broadcasts every emotion you feel: surprise, anger, fear, excitement, insecurity, to anyone paying attention, and the people who want to control you. They are always paying attention. Machiavelli understood that the prince must be a great pretender and dissembler. This is not about lying. This is about emotional sovereignty. It is about refusing to let your internal state become public property. It is about maintaining a face that reveals nothing, a mask so calm, so composed, so impenetrable, that the people around you cannot find a single crack to exploit. The unreadable face does 3 things simultaneously. First, it denies your opponent's information. When they cannot read your reaction, they cannot adjust their strategy. They are fighting blind. Second, it creates an aura of depth. People assume that behind a calm exterior lies a mind of extraordinary complexity. They project intelligence, wisdom, and power onto you simply because you are not giving them anything else to work with. Third, it makes you intimidating, not through aggression, through mystery. The unknown is always more frightening than the known. Think about the most powerful people you have ever encountered. In person, on screen, in history. What did their faces look like? Not animated, not expressive, calm, still, unreadable. The slight narrowing of eyes that could mean anything. The faint smile that reveals nothing. The steady gaze that does not waver, even under pressure. This is a skill, and it can be trained. Start by becoming aware of your facial reactions. Notice when you raise your eyebrows in surprise, when you furrow your brow in disagreement, when you smile to seek approval. These are involuntary broadcasts of your emotional state, and every single one of them is giving away your position. The goal is not to become a robot. The goal is to choose which emotions you display and when. A smile should be a reward you grant deliberately, not a reflex you cannot control. A frown should be a weapon you deploy strategically, not an automatic response to displeasure. Your face should be a tool, the most sophisticated tool in your arsenal, and you should be the one deciding when and how it is used. In a negotiation, the unreadable face is devastating. When the other party makes their offer and you respond with nothing, no smile, no nod, no reaction at all, they immediately begin to doubt themselves. They start wondering if their offer was too low, too high, too aggressive, too weak. They fill your silence and your stillness with their own insecurities. And in that moment, you have already won. In social settings, the unreadable face creates magnetic gravity. People are drawn to what they cannot decode. When everyone around you is performing, laughing too loudly, reacting too quickly, signaling their emotions like neon signs, your composure becomes the most interesting thing in the room. You become the still point in a spinning world, and that stillness is irresistible. Machiavelli observed that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, but to few to come in touch with you. What he meant is this: perception is reality. And if what people see when they look at you is a face of absolute control, absolute calm, absolute composure, then that is who you are in their minds. It does not matter what storms are raging inside you. What matters is the mask, and the mask must be flawless. Law 3. The law of strategic absence. This is the law that the weak will never understand, because it contradicts everything they believe about influence. They think that being present, being visible, being available, being constantly in the mix, is what creates power. It is not. What creates power is knowing when to disappear. Machiavelli noted that men desire novelty to such an extent that those who are doing well wish for a change as much as those who are doing badly. This tells you something fundamental about human psychology. Familiarity breeds contempt, and scarcity breeds desire. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. The more present you are, the more the world takes you for granted. But the moment you vanish, the moment you pull back, withdraw your energy, and become unreachable, you create a void. And that void speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Strategic absence is not about disappearing permanently. It is about creating rhythms of presence and absence that keep people perpetually off balance. You show up powerfully, then you vanish. You engage deeply, then you withdraw. You give your attention generously, then you take it away completely. This creates a pattern of unpredictability that is, in Machiavellian terms, one of the most potent weapons in existence. Think about the people in your life who have the most emotional hold over you. Are they the ones who are always there, always available, always responding? No. They are the ones whose attention you can never quite predict. The ones who sometimes respond immediately and sometimes do not respond for days. The ones whose presence feels like a gift because you can never take it for granted. That is not accidental. That is the law of strategic absence at work, whether they are using it consciously or not. Now imagine using it deliberately. Imagine being the person whose presence in a group chat, in a social circle, in a relationship, in a workplace, is never guaranteed. Imagine the weight your arrival would carry if people never knew when you would appear. Imagine the anxiety your absence would create if people never knew when you would return. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding a fundamental law of human desire. We want what we cannot have, and we value what we cannot predict. Your job is to become the thing that cannot be had on demand and cannot be predicted by anyone. In practice, this means several things. It means not being the first to arrive and the last to leave. It means declining invitations sometimes, not because you are busy, but because your absence sends a message that your presence never could. It means pulling back from conversations before they reach their natural end, leaving people wanting more rather than feeling saturated. It means understanding that your energy is the most valuable resource you possess, and distributing it with the precision of a strategist rather than the generosity of a fool. Machiavelli would tell you that the prince who is always accessible is the prince who is easily replaced. But the prince who appears only when the moment demands it, who arrives like a force of nature and departs like a whisper, That prince is irreplaceable because his presence has meaning. His attention has weight, and his absence creates a void that no one else can fill. Learn to disappear. Learn to let the world wonder where you are, and when you return with the force of someone who has never gone, just watching from the shadows. Law 4. The law of controlled emotion. Let us talk about the thing that has cost you more power than any other single factor in your life, your emotions. Not the emotions themselves. Emotions are data, and data is valuable. The problem is what you do with that data. The problem is that you broadcast it, you wear it. You let it drive your actions and your words and your decisions in real time, without any filter between what you feel and what you show. And that is the difference between a pawn and a player. The pawn is moved by emotion. The player uses emotion, strategically, deliberately, and only when it serves a calculated purpose. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the role of emotion in power dynamics, and his conclusion was unambiguous. The leader who is governed by his emotions is governed by others. Because the moment someone can provoke an emotional reaction in you, anger, jealousy, fear, excitement, they have control over your behavior. They have found the strings, and they are pulling them. The law of controlled emotion does not ask you to become cold. It asks you to become sovereign. There is a profound difference. A cold person suppresses their emotions and eventually breaks under the weight of what they have buried. A sovereign person feels everything, every flash of anger, every tremor of fear, every surge of desire, and then chooses, with absolute deliberation, how and whether to express it. This is the hardest law to master, and it is the most valuable. Because the man who controls his emotions controls the dynamic of every room he enters. When everyone around him is reacting to insults, to provocations, to chaos, he remains still. And that stillness is not passive. It is the stillness of a predator who has already calculated every possible move and is simply waiting for the optimal moment to strike. Think about the last time you lost your temper. The last time you said something you regretted because your emotions were running the show. What happened? You gave someone else the satisfaction of knowing they could get to you. You revealed a weakness that will be tested again and again. You traded long-term power for short-term release. Now think about what would have happened if you had said nothing. If you had absorbed that provocation like stone absorbs rain, letting it hit, letting it run off, remaining unchanged. The person who provoked you would have been confused, disarmed, possibly even frightened, because they expected a reaction, and they got silence. And that silence told them something terrifying. Nothing they do can touch you. This is the energy of the sovereign. This is the presence that Machiavelli spent his entire career studying and documenting. The leader who could not be provoked was the leader who could not be defeated. Because defeat requires a reaction, and a reaction requires a loss of control. Remove the reaction, and you remove the possibility of defeat. Here is how you start training this. The next time you feel a strong emotion in a social interaction, anger, defensiveness, the need to prove yourself, do not act on it. Notice it. Name it in your mind. Anger, fear, ego, and then let it pass through you like wind through an open window. Do not suppress it. Do not deny it. Simply refuse to let it drive your behavior. The emotion will pass. It always does. But the power you gain from not reacting, that stays, that compounds. That becomes the foundation of an aura that no one in the room can challenge. Controlled emotion is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of expression, and that mastery is what separates the king from the crowd. Law 5. The law of the deliberate gaze. You have been told that eye contact is important. You have been told to make eye contact to show confidence, to show interest, to show that you are paying attention. But what you have never been told is this. Eye contact is not a social gesture. It is a weapon. And like any weapon, it is lethal when wielded with precision and dangerous when used carelessly. Machiavelli understood that the eyes are the most powerful instrument of influence a human being possesses. Not the voice, not the hands, the eyes. Because the eyes do something that nothing else can. They create a direct, unmediated connection between two minds. When you look someone in the eye, you are not just seeing them. You are entering their psychological space. And the way you do it, the steadiness, the duration, the intensity, determines whether you enter as a guest or as a conqueror. The law of the deliberate gaze has three components. The first is the holding gaze. This is the ability to maintain eye contact without flinching, without looking away, without breaking under the pressure of being seen. Most people cannot do this. Most people look away after 2 or 3 seconds because sustained eye contact creates a level of intimacy and vulnerability that their psyche cannot handle. But you hold. You hold until the other person looks away first. And in that moment, that seemingly small moment, a hierarchy has been established. You are the one who did not flinch. You are the one with the steadier nerve, and both of you know it. The second component is the withdrawing gaze. This is equally powerful and far more subtle. It is the act of deliberately breaking eye contact, not out of weakness, but out of dismissal. When someone is speaking to you and you slowly, calmly shift your gaze to something else, a window, a distant point, even just the middle distance, you are communicating something devastating. What you are saying does not merit my full attention. This is not a tool to use carelessly. It is a surgical instrument. Used at the right moment, it can deflate someone's confidence more effectively than any words you could speak. The third component is the silent gaze. This is the gaze you hold during silence, your own silence. When someone asks you a question and you do not answer immediately, but instead hold their eyes with a calm, steady, unblinking look, you create a moment of such concentrated power that the other person often begins to fill the silence themselves, revealing more than they intended. The silent gaze is the combination of Law 1 and Law 5 working in concert, and it is devastating. Practice these. Practice them in the mirror. Practice them in conversations. Notice how people react when you hold their gaze a beat longer than expected. Notice how they shift, how they fidget, how they reveal their discomfort. And notice how that discomfort translates into respect. Because at the primal unconscious level, the person who can hold a gaze is the person who holds the power. Your eyes are not windows to your soul. They are gates. And you decide when they open, how wide, and for whom. Law 6, the law of the measured response. The average person responds to every stimulus at the same level of intensity. Someone makes a joke, they laugh. Someone makes a critique, they defend. Someone makes a compliment, they smile. Their responses are automatic, predictable, and therefore controllable. They are vending machines. Insert a stimulus, receive a response. No surprises, no complexity, no power. You are going to be different. You are going to become the person whose responses are never predictable, never proportional, and never automatic. This is the law of the measured response, and it is the law that creates the most confusion, and therefore the most influence, in the people around you. Machiavelli observed that the prince who wants to keep his authority must learn how not to be good, and to use that knowledge or refrain from using it as he sees fit. Translate this to modern life. The person who wants to maintain power must learn how not to react, and to deploy or withhold reaction as strategy demands. Here is what this looks like in practice. Someone pays you a compliment. The automatic response is to smile, to thank them, perhaps to return the compliment. But the measured response? A slight nod, a brief, almost imperceptible acknowledgement. Nothing more. This drives the complimenter into a spiral of self-doubt. Was it not enough? Did I say the wrong thing? What do they really think? And suddenly, you are the most fascinating person in their orbit. Not because you did something extraordinary, but because you refused to do what was expected. Someone challenges you publicly. The automatic response is to defend, to argue, to escalate. But the measured response? A calm look, a pause, and then, maybe, a single sentence that addresses the challenge with such precision that no further discussion is needed. Or perhaps nothing at all. Just the pause, the look, and then a redirection of the conversation, as if the challenge was too insignificant to warrant acknowledgement. The key principle behind the measured response is this. The size of your reaction determines the size of the stimulus. When you react strongly, you make the stimulus important. When you react minimally, you make the stimulus irrelevant. And the power to decide what is important and what is irrelevant is the power to control the reality of every room you occupy. This applies everywhere. In arguments, where the person who reacts least always wins. In negotiations, where the person who shows least emotion always gets the better deal. In relationships, where the person whose reactions cannot be predicted always holds the emotional leverage. Measure your responses. Calibrate them. Deliver them with the precision of an architect, not the chaos of a storm. And watch how the world rearranges itself around your composure. Law 7. The law of the final word. We arrive now at the seventh and most dangerous law. The law that, once understood, will change not just how you speak, but how you end. Every conversation, every interaction, every encounter, the average person lets conversations die. They trail off. They say goodbye awkwardly. They leave rooms with weak exits, a mumbled farewell, a distracted wave, an anticlimactic ending that leaves no impression. They do not understand that the last thing said is the thing remembered. That the final moment of any interaction is the moment that echoes. Machiavelli knew this. The entire structure of The Prince is built toward its final chapters. The most passionate, the most urgent, the most unforgettable. He understood that endings define legacies. Endings define impressions. Endings define everything. The law of the final word states this. You must always be the one who determines when and how an interaction ends. You do not let conversations fade. You end them decisively, memorably, and on your terms. You deliver a final sentence that is so precise, so weighty, so perfectly timed, that it becomes the only thing the other person remembers when they think about you. This is not about having the last word in an argument. That is petty. This is about having the last impression in every encounter. It is about leaving a room in a way that makes people replay your exit in their minds. It is about closing a conversation with a sentence that reverberates long after you are gone. In practice, this means developing a sense of timing that borders on theatrical. You learn to feel the peak of a conversation. That moment when the energy is at its highest, when the impact of your words is at its maximum. And you end there. Not after. Not when the energy has started to decline. At the peak. Because ending at the peak means you leave on a high note, and that high note is what the other person carries with them. It means developing a repertoire of closing statements, not scripted lines, but a habit of thought that naturally produces conclusive, resonant sentences. The kind of sentences that feel like doors closing, final, authoritative, complete, and it means understanding exit energy. The way you stand up, the way you turn, the way you leave a room. All of it should communicate the same thing. This interaction ended because I decided it ended. Not because we ran out of things to say, not because it got awkward. because I chose this moment, and my choice is final. The silent man does not just dominate the room while he is in it. He dominates the room after he leaves, because his exit, his final word, his final look, his final measured breath before turning away, leaves an impression that lingers like the echo of a bell in an empty cathedral. Most people obsess over entrances. The Machiavellian mind obsesses over exits, because the entrance gets you into the room, but the exit gets you into their memory, and memory is where true power lives. These are the 7 laws, 7 principles of silence, composure, and strategic restraint that have been used by the most powerful minds in history to dominate without force, to control without coercion, and to lead without ever needing to raise their voice. But knowing them is not enough. Knowledge without application is decoration. And you are not here for decoration. You are here for transformation. So the question now becomes, how do you take these laws and weave them into the fabric of your daily life? How do you stop reading about power and start living it? How do you move from understanding to embodiment? That is what comes next. And it is the part that will separate those who merely watched this video from those who were changed by it. Stay with me. The deepest cut is yet to come. Let us move from theory to warfare. Because that is what your daily life is. A war. Not of swords and shields, but of perceptions, impressions, and invisible power dynamics that most people navigate blindly. You are no longer going to be blind. You are going to see the battlefield for what it is, and you are going to move across it with the precision of someone who has studied every inch of the terrain. Let us start with the environment where most people hemorrhage power without even realizing it. The workplace. Applying the laws at work. You walk into the office. The meeting starts in 10 minutes. Your colleagues are already there, chattering, checking their phones, performing the rituals of casual sociability. The average person joins the noise. They say good morning to everyone, they make small talk, they laugh at jokes, they blend into the collective energy like a drop of water in an ocean. And they wonder later why no one takes them seriously. You are going to do something different. You are going to arrive without announcement. No loud greeting, no performative smile. You walk in, you nod once, a single deliberate nod that acknowledges the room without inviting conversation, and you take your seat. You arrange your materials with unhurried precision. You do not look at your phone. You do not fidget. You sit with the composure of someone who is exactly where they are supposed to be, doing exactly what they are supposed to do. This is the law of the unreadable face and the law of strategic absence working in concert. Your arrival is noticed precisely because it is understated. Your composure is felt precisely because everyone else is performing. And by the time the meeting begins, you have already established a dynamic that will persist for the next hour. You are the still point, the center of gravity, the person everyone unconsciously calibrates against. Now the meeting begins. Ideas are thrown around, voices compete. People interrupt each other, building their arguments on volume rather than logic. This is the moment where the law of the withheld word becomes your greatest asset. You do not speak first. You do not speak second. You listen. You take notes, or you don't, because sometimes the absence of note-taking sends its own message. This is already mapped in my mind. You let the conversation develop. You let the weak ideas expose themselves. You let the strong ideas reveal their authors. And only when the room has exhausted its initial energy, only when the pause arrives, that natural lull where everyone has said their piece, do you speak. And when you do, you say one thing. One clear, precise, devastating thing that cuts through everything that came before it. Not a speech. Not a presentation. A single observation that reframes the entire conversation. Something like, "Everything we have discussed assumes the client wants what they asked for. What if they don't? That is it. That is all you need." One sentence, delivered with the calm authority of someone who was never anxious about being heard because they knew their moment would come. And in that moment, every head in the room turns to you, every eye locks onto you, and you have done more with one sentence than your loudest colleague did with 20 minutes of continuous talking. This is not theory. This is a weapon you can deploy tomorrow morning, and the results will be immediate. Now, let us talk about the scenario that destroys most people's composure: public criticism. Someone challenges you in front of others. Your boss questions your judgment. A colleague implies you made an error. The ordinary response, the weak response, is to defend yourself immediately, to explain, to justify, to launch into a monologue that sounds less like confidence and more like panic with good grammar. The Machiavellian response is this: nothing. You receive the criticism with the same expression you would use to receive a weather report. Mild interest. Zero emotional investment. You let the silence hang for exactly long enough to make the room uncomfortable. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, an eternity in conversational terms, and then you respond with a question. Not a defensive question, an analytical question. Something like, "That's an interesting perspective. What specifically leads you to that conclusion? Do you see what just happened?" You did not defend. You did not attack. You redirected. You took the weapon that was aimed at you, and with a single calm question, turned it back on the person who fired it. Now they have to justify their position. Now they are on the defensive. And you achieved this without raising your voice, without showing emotion, without giving anyone in that room the satisfaction of seeing you rattled. This is the law of controlled emotion, and the law of the measured response, operating as a combined force. And it is, in practical terms, the single most powerful professional skill you can develop. Because the person who cannot be rattled cannot be defeated. And the person who cannot be defeated is the person who rises. Let us move to relationships, because this is where most people are the weakest, where their emotional discipline collapses, where they become the version of themselves they would never accept in any other arena. Applying the laws in relationships. The most common mistake in relationships, romantic, platonic, familial, is over-availability. You respond to every text immediately. You are always free. You always say yes. You never create distance. And because of this, your presence becomes worthless. Not because you are worthless, but because abundance kills value. Always. The law of strategic absence is your most important tool here. And let me be precise about how to use it, because there is a difference between strategic absence and emotional manipulation. Emotional manipulation is pulling away to punish someone. Strategic absence is pulling away to maintain balance. The intention matters. You are not trying to hurt anyone. You are trying to preserve the gravitational dynamic that makes any relationship healthy and sustainable. Here is what this looks like. You are in a relationship, let us say romantic. Things are going well. You are spending time together, communicating regularly, building connection. But you notice something. The other person has started to take your presence for granted. They respond to your messages later. They make plans without consulting you. They assume you will always be there. The weak man panics. He doubles down. More attention, more availability, more effort to prove his value. And every additional effort pushes the other person further away because it communicates the opposite of what he intends. It communicates desperation. It communicates that he has nothing better to do. It communicates that she is the center of his world. And that is a weight no one wants to carry. The Machiavellian man does the opposite. He pulls back, not dramatically, not with announcements or ultimatums. He simply becomes slightly less available. He takes a little longer to respond. He makes plans of his own. He redirects his energy toward his own growth, his own interests, his own world. And in doing so, he creates a void. That void is the most powerful force in any relationship, because the other person feels it immediately. They notice the shift. They start wondering, is he losing interest? Is something wrong? Did I do something? And suddenly, without a single word being spoken, the dynamic has reversed. The person who was taking you for granted is now the person seeking your attention. Not because you punished them, because you reminded them through absence that your presence is not guaranteed. This is Machiavelli in its most elegant form. No confrontation, no drama, no emotional warfare, just the quiet, deliberate adjustment of your availability, and the psychological earthquake that follows. Now let us talk about the social arena, the dinner parties, the gatherings, the group settings where most people drown in noise and emerge with no impact whatsoever. Applying the laws in social settings, you arrive at a social event. The room is full of people performing. They are telling stories, making jokes, competing for the spotlight. The energy is frenetic, scattered, chaotic. The average person enters this chaos and tries to match it. They raise their energy, they laugh louder, they tell their own stories, they compete. You do not compete, you observe. You find a position in the room, not in the center, not in the corner, but somewhere with a clear sight line to the entire space. You hold a drink, not because you need it, but because it gives your hands something to do and prevents the fidgeting that broadcasts insecurity. You stand with your shoulders open, your posture grounded, your expression neutral, and you wait. People will come to you. They always do. Because in a room full of noise, the silent person is the anomaly, the mystery, the thing that does not fit the pattern. And human curiosity, the same curiosity that Machiavelli identified as one of the most exploitable human traits, will draw them to you like moths to a flame. When they approach, you engage. But you do not engage the way everyone else does. You do not rush to fill the conversation with facts about yourself. You ask questions, deep, specific, unexpectedly penetrating questions, not, "What do you do?" but "What about your work keeps you up at night?" Not, "How do you know the host?" but "What brought you here tonight? Really?" These questions accomplish two things simultaneously. First, they make the other person feel seen in a way they rarely experience. Most conversations are two people waiting for their turn to talk. But when you ask a question that cuts beneath the surface, you create a moment of genuine connection that the other person will remember. Second, they give you information. Valuable, actionable information about who this person is, what they want, what they fear, and how they can be useful to you, or how you can be useful to them. This is Law 1 and Law 5 in social action. You listen more than you speak. You observe more than you perform. And when you do speak, your words are so precisely chosen, so unexpectedly insightful, that you leave an impression far deeper than the loudest storyteller in the room. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. Now let me address the traps. Because there are traps in this path, and if you are not aware of them, they will swallow you. Trap 1. Confusing silence with rudeness. There is a line between the strategic silent man and the socially inept man, and that line is warmth. The silent man is not cold, he is selective. He does not ignore people. He chooses when and how to engage. When he does engage, he is fully present. His eye contact is steady. His responses are thoughtful. His energy is warm, but contained. The difference between strategic silence and rudeness is intention and awareness. You are not withdrawing from people. You are being deliberate about how you connect with them. Trap 2. Becoming a character instead of a person. These laws are tools, not a personality. If you adopt them as a permanent mask without any genuine connection underneath, people will eventually see through it. The silent man is effective because his silence comes from a place of genuine depth, real thinking, real observation, real self-control. If it comes from a place of performance, it is hollow, and hollow things collapse. Trap 3. Using these laws to harm. Machiavelli is often misread as an advocate for cruelty. He was not. He was an advocate for effectiveness. These laws should be used to protect yourself, to advance your legitimate interests, to create respect and influence in your environment. They should never be used to demean, to humiliate, or to cause unnecessary suffering. The true Machiavellian is not a villain. He is a pragmatist who understands that power wielded responsibly is the foundation of order. Trap 4. Expecting instant results. These laws are not hacks, they are disciplines, and disciplines take time to mature. The first time you practice the withheld word, you might feel awkward. The first time you deploy the unreadable face, you might overdo it. The first time you use strategic absence, you might misjudge the timing. This is normal. These are skills, and skills require practice. The difference between you and the person who watches this video and changes nothing is not talent. It is repetition. Practice these laws daily, and within weeks, they will become instinct. Within months, they will become your nature. And within a year, you will be a fundamentally different person, the kind of person that rooms rearrange themselves around. Trap 5. Thinking these laws are about other people. They are not. They are about you. Every law here is, at its core, a law of self-mastery. The withheld word is about controlling your impulse to speak. The unreadable face is about governing your emotional expression. Strategic absence is about managing your own availability. Controlled emotion is about sovereignty over your inner state. The deliberate gaze is about directing your attention. The measured response is about calibrating your reactions. The final word is about taking ownership of your impact. This is not a system for controlling others. It is a system for controlling yourself. And the paradox, the beautiful Machiavellian paradox, is that the moment you gain total control over yourself, you gain enormous influence over everyone around you. Not through force, not through manipulation, through the sheer magnetic power of a human being who is fully sovereign over their own mind, body, and presence. Let me give you one more scenario before we move to the final phase. This is the scenario that tests every law simultaneously, and it is the scenario that most people fail spectacularly, the moment of betrayal. Someone you trusted, a friend, a partner, a colleague, has betrayed you, lied to you, gone behind your back. The natural response is volcanic. Anger, confrontation, an explosion of wounded ego that gives the betrayer exactly what they expect and, in many cases, exactly what they want. The Machiavellian response is ice. You say nothing. You show nothing. You continue as if nothing has happened. Not because you are passive, not because you are weak, but because you are gathering information. You are observing. You are mapping the extent of the betrayal, identifying who else might be involved, and calculating the most effective response. The response that comes not from emotion, but from strategy. And when that response comes, days later, weeks later, at a time of your choosing, it is delivered with such surgical precision that the betrayer never sees it coming. It is calm, it is devastating, and it is final. Not a screaming match, not a tearful confrontation, a quiet, composed action that makes the betrayer realize, too late, that they underestimated the one person they should never have crossed. This is the pinnacle of the 7 laws working in concert. Silence, composure, absence, emotional control, the steady gaze, the measured response, and the final decisive act, the final word that closes the chapter on your terms. You are not there yet, but you are closer than you were an hour ago. And by the time this video ends, The gap between who you are and who you are becoming will be almost invisible. This is the transformation that is happening right now inside you, whether you realize it or not. Something is shifting. Something is hardening, not in a cruel way, but in the way that steel hardens, through pressure, through heat, through the deliberate forging of something stronger than what existed before. And that brings us to the final phase, the phase where everything we have discussed crystallizes into a single, unshakable identity, the phase where you stop learning about the silent man and start becoming him. Stay. Because what comes next is not a conclusion. It is a beginning. Something has changed in you. You can feel it. It is not dramatic. It is not a lightning bolt or a sudden revelation. It is quieter than that, more subtle, more dangerous. It is the feeling of a mind that has been rearranged, of neural pathways that have been redirected from reaction to calculation, from impulse to strategy, from noise to silence. You are not the same person who pressed play on this video. That person was still carrying the weight of 1,000 unnecessary words, 1,000 reflexive reactions, 1,000 moments where they gave their power away to people and situations that did not deserve it. That person believed, somewhere deep in their programming, that being heard was the same as being respected. That visibility was the same as value. That noise was the same as strength. That person is gone now. And in their place stands someone quieter, someone sharper, someone whose silence is not empty but loaded with observation, with strategy, with the kind of patient, lethal intelligence that cannot be taught in any classroom, but can only be forged through the deliberate practice of the 7 laws you have just absorbed. Let us take a moment to see who you are becoming. Not who you were, who you are becoming. You are becoming the person who walks into a room and changes its temperature, not through volume, not through performance, through presence, the kind of presence that is felt before it is understood, the kind that makes people sit up a little straighter, choose their words a little more carefully, pay attention in a way they did not realize they were capable of. You are becoming the person whose silence speaks volumes, whose every word is an event, whose composure is a fortress that no provocation, no criticism, no chaos can breach. The person that others describe, when you are not around, with a mixture of respect and fascination. There is something about them, I can't explain it. But when they walk in, everything shifts. That something is not magic. It is mastery. It is the mastery of silence, of emotion, of presence, of timing. It is the mastery of the 7 laws. Laws that are now not just ideas in your mind, but principles that are rewiring the way you think, the way you move, the way you exist in every space you occupy. Let me remind you of what you have learned, not as a summary, but as a declaration. You have learned the law of the withheld word, that the person who speaks last speaks loudest, that timing is more valuable than content, that every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from the bank of your credibility. From this point forward, you will not speak to fill silence. You will speak to end it. Your words will be verdicts, not conversations, pronouncements, not chatter. And the world will listen, not because you demanded it, but because your restraint commanded it. You have learned the law of the unreadable face, that your expression is a broadcast, and you are the one who controls the signal. No more involuntary smiles to seek approval. No more furrowed brows that betray your doubt. No more reactive expressions that hand your enemies a map of your emotional terrain. Your face is now a mask you wear by choice. Warm when warmth is strategic, cold when coldness is required, and neutral when neutrality gives you the greatest advantage. You have learned the law of strategic absence, that scarcity creates value, and value creates power. You will no longer be the person who is always available, always present, always predictable. You will appear when the moment calls for you and vanish when your absence serves you better. And in that rhythm, in that unpredictable dance of presence and withdrawal, you will create a gravitational pull that no amount of constant availability could ever match. You have learned the law of controlled emotion, that emotions are data, not directives. You feel everything. You express almost nothing. Not because you are suppressing your humanity, but because you have evolved beyond the need to broadcast your internal state to a world that will use it against you. Your emotions are yours. They inform your decisions. They fuel your strategy. But they never drive your behavior without your explicit consent. You have learned the law of the deliberate gaze, that your eyes are the most potent weapon in your arsenal. The holding gaze that establishes dominance. The withdrawing gaze that communicates dismissal. The silent gaze that creates pressure no words can match. From now on, your eyes will not wander aimlessly. They will lock onto their target with the precision of a marksman, and they will communicate more in a single look than most people communicate in a lifetime of talking. You have learned the law of the measured response, that the size of your reaction determines the size of the stimulus. You no longer respond proportionally to every provocation. You respond strategically. A great insult receives a small reaction. A small gesture of genuine respect receives a great one. This asymmetry confuses, disarms, and ultimately subjugates the people around you, because they can never predict what will move you. And what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. And you have learned the law of the final word, that endings define legacies, that the last thing said is the thing remembered, and that the man who controls the exit controls the memory. You will never again let a conversation trail off into awkward silence. You will never again leave a room without making an impression. Every interaction will end on your terms, at your chosen moment, with your chosen words, and those words will echo long after you are gone. These are not 7 separate laws. They are 7 facets of a single diamond, and that diamond is you, the version of you that has always existed beneath the noise, beneath the reactivity, beneath the desperate need to be seen and heard and validated. The version that does not need any of those things because it has something infinitely more valuable. Sovereignty. Complete. Unshakable. Absolute sovereignty over your own mind, your own presence, and your own power. Machiavelli spent his life studying the men who held kingdoms, and the conclusion he reached, across all his writings, across all his observations, is this: the men who held power were not the strongest, the loudest, or the most charismatic. They were the most disciplined. They were the men who had conquered themselves before they ever attempted to conquer anyone else. They were the men who understood that the world is a mirror, and the image it reflects back to you is determined entirely by what you show it. From this moment forward, what you show the world is different, quieter, deeper, more deliberate, more dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of harm. Dangerous in the sense that you can no longer be manipulated, no longer be predicted, no longer be dismissed. Dangerous in the sense that every room you enter recalibrates around your presence, and every person in that room feels, without understanding why, that you are someone to be taken seriously. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the loud man's substitute for real power. This is something older, deeper, and infinitely more effective. This is the quiet confidence of someone who has done the interior work, the brutal, uncomfortable, ego-crushing work of learning to master themselves. And here is the paradox, the final, glorious paradox that ties everything together, the paradox that Machiavelli hinted at, but never stated explicitly, because to state it would be to rob it of its power. The paradox is this: the silent man is the freest man, not despite his restraint, because of it. In a world where everyone is enslaved by their impulses, their reactions, their need for attention and approval and validation, the man who has mastered silence has mastered the only freedom that matters, the freedom from the tyranny of his own ego. Think about what that means. Really think about it. Every time you speak without thinking, your ego is driving. Every time you react to a provocation, your ego is driving. Every time you seek approval, chase validation, perform for an audience, your ego is driving. And the ego is not your friend. The ego is a tyrant, a petty, insecure, endlessly hungry tyrant that demands constant feeding and gives nothing in return except a momentary illusion of significance. The silent man has starved that tyrant. He has sat with the discomfort of unfed ego and discovered something remarkable. On the other side of that discomfort is peace. Real peace. Not the peace of passivity, but the peace of a warrior who has sheathed his sword. Not because he cannot fight, but because he knows that most battles are not worth fighting, and the battles that are worth fighting, those he wins before a single word is spoken. This is the transformation that has begun in you, not in some distant future, right now, in this very moment. The neural pathways are already forming. The old patterns are already weakening. The voice in your head that used to scream, speak, react, defend, prove yourself. That voice is quieter now. Not gone. Quieter. And with practice, it will become quieter still, until it is nothing more than a faint whisper that you acknowledge with a nod and then ignore. Because you are no longer governed by that voice. You are governed by something deeper, something colder, something infinitely more powerful. You are governed by strategy, by awareness, by the 7 laws that are now inscribed in your operating system, running silently in the background of every interaction, every conversation, every moment of every day. You are the silent man. And the silent man does not just dominate the room, he owns it. Now, before you leave this space, before you step back into the noise and the chaos of the world, I want to leave you with something. A final thought. A thought that you should carry with you like a talisman, a reminder of what you have learned here and who you are becoming. Machiavelli wrote, at the end of his greatest work, that fortune is the arbiter of one half of our actions, but that she still leaves the other half, or perhaps a little less, to be controlled by ourselves. What he was saying, what he was whispering to anyone sharp enough to hear, is that half of your fate is beyond your control. The world will do what it does. People will be who they are. Circumstances will shift without warning. But the other half is yours, entirely yours. And that half, the half that consists of your reactions, your composure, your presence, your words, your silence, is more than enough to shape a life of extraordinary power. Not the power of domination, the power of sovereignty. The power that comes from being a person who has conquered the only enemy that truly matters, themselves. That is your inheritance now. That is what this hour has given you. Not information, transformation. Not knowledge, identity. You walked in as someone who spoke too much, reacted too quickly, and gave too freely. You are walking out as someone who measures every word, controls every reaction, and distributes their presence with the precision of a general deploying troops. The world will not understand what changed. They will not be able to name it, but they will feel it. In every room you enter, in every conversation you have, in every silence you hold, they will feel it, and they will never look at you the same way again. If this message resonated with you, if something shifted in the quiet corners of your mind, then comment below the phrase, "My silence is my sovereignty." This is not a comment, it is a declaration. A silent pact between you and the version of yourself that is emerging right now, in this moment. Write it. Mean it. and carry it. And by subscribing to this channel, you are not just clicking a button, you are joining a fortress, a place where we declare, without hesitation and without apology, that we are ready to carry the weight of our own aura instead of seeking the relief of others' approval. A place where silence is not weakness, it is doctrine. A place where the quiet ones gather not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that what they choose not to say is what makes them unstoppable. This is not a community. It is a covenant, and you are now part of it. Go now. Walk back into the world that taught you to be loud, and teach it, through your silence, that it was wrong. Let your composure be your answer to every provocation. Let your restraint be your response to every temptation. Let your absence be the question that no one can answer, and your presence be the verdict that no one can appeal. And remember, always remember, that the most powerful force in any room is not the voice that echoes off the walls. It is the silence that makes the walls tremble. Go and say nothing, because nothing is the most powerful thing you will ever say.